Today, we're going to break down a really powerful idea that explains so much about how modern companies work. It's called agency theory, and it shines a light on this hidden and often really expensive conflict that's right at the heart of almost every big business. So let's start with a puzzle. Why on earth would a manager, someone who's literally hired to make a company succeed, make a call that gets them a nice bonus this year but could seriously hurt the company down the road? I mean, it seems totally backward, right? But it happens all the time. And that is the exact problem agency theory helps us understand. You see, the whole thing starts with a basic split that you'll find in almost any large corporation. It's the separation of ownership from control. The people who actually own the company, they're usually not the same people who are running it day to day.
So on one side, you've got the owners. We'll call them the principals. They're the ones who put up the money. And what they want is simple: long-term, steady growth for their investment. But then on the other side, you've got the managers, the agents, who are hired to make that happen. But their personal goals? Well, they might be a little different. Maybe they're focused on a bigger bonus, getting a promotion, or just, keeping their job secure. And this natural misalignment? That's the core of the agency problem.
And this fundamental clash of interests, it has a name. It's called the agency problem. And the whole framework for understanding it is agency theory. Now, here's the crucial part. Agency theory doesn't just point out the conflict. It also gives us a way to understand the costs that come from trying to fix it. Because, look, knowing that owners and managers might want different things is one thing. But being able to calculate what that misalignment actually costs a company in real money, that's the real game changer.
And hey, this isn't some brand new idea. The theory was officially laid out way back in 1976 by a couple of economists, Michael Jensen and William Meckling. It took off pretty quickly and became super influential, shaping everything from how CEOs get paid to major corporate reforms in the 80s. And even today, it's still a cornerstone of how we think about business.
Okay, so if this misalignment creates costs, what exactly are they? Well, agency theory breaks them down into three main categories. Think of them as the hidden costs of doing business.
First up, you've got monitoring costs. These are pretty straightforward. It's the money the owners spend just to keep an eye on the managers. Think about things like hiring outside auditors or paying a board of directors. Then there are bonding costs. This is what managers spend to basically prove they're on the right track, like agreeing to contracts that tie their bonus directly to how well the company does. And finally, there's the trickiest one, residual loss. This is the value that's just lost. Because even with all the monitoring and all the bonding, you can never get perfect alignment. There's always some gap.
So the total agency cost is just adding all three of those up. And the goal for any company isn't to get these costs to zero, because that's impossible. The real goal is to find the right balance to keep that total cost as low as possible and make sure the business is heading in the right direction.
So we've laid out the problem, we've identified the costs. The next big question is, what do you do about it? How do you actually bridge that gap between what the owners want and what the managers are doing?
Well, this is where the theory gets really practical. Let's say the risk is that a manager is just chasing short-term profits. A good tool for that? Stock options that only become valuable in the long run. Worried about a CEO going on a reckless expansion spree? Make them hold a significant amount of company stock, so their own personal wealth is tied to the company's long-term health. And what if you're worried about managers wasting cash on their own pet projects? You can actually impose debt. Nothing forces financial discipline, quite like having to make a big interest payment every quarter.
And beyond just those direct incentives, there's a whole system of corporate governance that's basically designed to fight the agency problem. These are all the formal checks and balances you hear about. The board of directors is there to represent the shareholders, audit committees and external auditors make sure the numbers are real, and things like shareholder voting rights. They're all about creating transparency and holding people accountable.
Now, for as powerful and useful as agency theory is, it's definitely not without its critics. Some people argue it paints a picture that's, well, a little too cynical, maybe even incomplete when it comes to what motivates people.
The main criticism is that agency theory basically assumes all managers are just out for themselves and that they'll only do the right thing if they're being watched. But is that always true? I mean, what about a sense of duty or loyalty or just good old professional pride in a job well done?
And that brings us to a competing idea called stewardship theory. It offers a completely different take. So, where agency theory sees a self-interested agent who needs to be controlled, stewardship theory sees a steward, someone who is naturally motivated to do its best for the company. In this view, managers value the firm's reputation and long-term health, and they really see themselves as caretakers.
So, which one is right? Honestly, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But even with the critiques, the core lesson of agency theory is still incredibly valuable. It gives us an essential blueprint for designing systems, everything from paychecks to governance rules, that help make sure what people do is aligned with what the organization needs.
And that leaves us with a final thought. Think about any organization you know, your job, a club you're in, even a local government. Can you spot who the principals are and who the agents are? And more importantly, can you see those potential conflicts, those hidden agency costs that might be quietly shaping the decisions being made? Because once you start looking for it, I promise you will see the agency problem everywhere.